And if you remember, like, going back to his first return to the AAC to play against the Mavericks on April 9th of last year, when they played the tribute video, Luka couldn't contain himself. Like, tears were coming down his eyes. He was having a hard time. He was really emotional. And then he went out and dropped 45 on his old team and led him to a victory. So that's definitely a guy who didn't want to leave Dallas. He still owns a home here, and he was there before they played each other the other night. So I don't think there will be any disdain, even if he was to play this team in a playoff series. And you know how Luka is. He's pretty animated when he's talking to opposing teams. I think that would be a great story. As a journalist, I would love to cover a series like that. But yeah, I don't think the fan base would turn on Luka.
Hi everyone, Tim Kitzer with you, the voice of NBA Jam. From top journalists and authors to rising influencers and insiders, Hoopsology brings you the voices driving basketball forward. With elite guests and sharp analysis, Matt, Justin, and Alan keep you plugged into everything hoops. From downtown, boom shakalaka.
So, we're almost near the All-Star break. A little bit, we're after Martin Luther King Day in terms of those slates of games. If you had to summarize this season so far in one word, what would it be?
Oh, one word. I was prepared for the one sentence. I think that was the question that you sent me. One word.
Oh, one sentence, one word. Either one. Take it any way you want it.
Okay, I got my sentence ready.
Gotcha.
This Mavericks season has been a tale of unfortunate events, but a glimpse into a bright future.
Gotcha. Could you elaborate on that in terms of why you feel that way, and do you think they can possibly turn that around and have a bright future after the All-Star break, you think?
So, yeah, it all started with the first day of training camp. I mean, everyone knew this team was going to be without Kyrie Irving while he was recovering from a left ACL tear that he suffered back in March. We all knew they were going to be without Kyrie, but Daniel Gafford suffered a really bad right ankle sprain that's pretty much plagued him the entire season. He's re-aggravated several times since training camp opened. I think it was September 29th. And from there, you just see the Mavericks have had unfortunate injury after unfortunate injury. You start at the top with Anthony Davis, who suffered a left calf strain earlier in the year, made him miss almost a month. Then you go down to Derrick Lively, who hadn't played much this season to begin with. Then he was ruled out because he had to get surgery on that foot that had been hindering him dating back to last season. You get the news about Dante Exum, who didn't even get to practice from the start of the season because he had some problems with that knee that he had a procedure over from the off season. You learn about AD. Not only did he have the calf, and not only does he have the ligament damage in his left hand right now, but he also had a procedure during the off season to repair detached retina, which is why he's wearing that protective eyewear. So you take all of that into consideration, and this team kind of never had a real shot to get started. I think if everyone was healthy, they would be in a much better position than they are right now, sitting outside the play-in tournament. But the one thing that this has done is given Cooper Flagg an opportunity to pretty much go out and have the experience of a number one pick that we didn't think that he was going to have. We thought he was going to be surrounded by veterans who would be able to kind of carry that offensive burden, but he was thrusted into a situation that pretty much most number one picks get the chance to go to. You go to a bad team, you get to develop in real time, and you get as many reps as you can have. And I think since the start of the season, when they started experimenting with him at the point guard position, it wasn't the prettiest, but I think it helped him in the long run because now he's able to pretty much go against different type of defenses and initiate offense, and he's one of the league leaders in clutch points. So I think it's paid off well for Cooper's development.
Yeah, it's interesting you pointed out about him starting off as, starting with the point guard, because you're right, it wasn't pretty at first, but it's similar to kind of like Amin Thompson in Houston being thrust into the point guard role, and it wasn't pretty at first, but he's really put together some good games lately, and you've seen that from Cooper also. He's really starting to understand how to run the offense. So Cooper Flagg comes to the Mavericks, almost as like kind of the savior because after Luka's trade, people are, the fans, I imagine, were pretty unhappy. What does he mean to the fan base and the team right now?
But yeah, I think if anything, Cooper represents a second chance. Obviously, it's a fan base that was heartbroken. Nearly a year to this date. It was February 2nd. Luka Dončić gets traded in the middle of the night. A guy who most people thought would be with this franchise probably as long as Dirk was, 21 seasons. Probably one day would have a statue outside of American Airlines Center, or as of right now, they're probably not going to be in American Airlines Center too much longer because they're getting a new arena. But I think Cooper represents a fresh opportunity, another shot. He's kind of going down that lineage of Dirk as the franchise face that got transitioned to Luka Dončić. And although it was initially intended that it was going to be Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, Klay Thompson, and the rest of the Mavericks core, it's suddenly become Cooper Flagg is going to be that next face of the Mavericks in that lineage. So I think he represents a fresh start, a new opportunity, and most people are saying, a generational talent that you can build around for the foreseeable future.
Do you know how he's acclimated to the NBA so far? You mentioned this his generational talent, but as with all rookies, there's there's that welcome to the NBA moment, right? That all rookies go through. So in terms of him just adjusting to the speed of the league, what has he kind of gone through to kind of acclimate himself and perform great so far? Especially you see the Kia rookie ladder. I mean, he's right there for rookie of the year.
Yeah, for sure. Like I mentioned, it wasn't easy from the start. He was playing in a position that he'd never played majority of his career. He's a natural small forward, power forward type of product, that's his build. But Jason Kidd, he said from day one, he wanted to make him uncomfortable. He wanted to put the ball in his hands. And I think it's something that you see a lot of superstars have to go through. When the game gets close, they're going to have the ball in their hands and they're going to have to be able to make plays, whether it's for themselves or for others. And I think Cooper's gotten a lot of chances and opportunities to do that here in Dallas. When you think about just some of the struggles that he's had to go through just being a rookie, coming in at 18 years old, you're playing games probably every other night, as opposed to when you're in college, you probably only got 2 games. I know he just recently passed the threshold mark of as many games as he played in Duke. He's now played in the NBA, and he's only halfway through his rookie year. So you got to get a routine down. You got to build healthy eating habits. You got to make sure you're getting the proper amount of rest. You got to get acclimated to back-to-backs. They don't have back-to-backs in college, but they have a lot of them here in the NBA. And I think Dallas has 16 of them, and it could possibly be a 17th, depending on what they do with this postponed game that they just had against the Bucks because of weather. Cooper's pretty much going through everything you would imagine as an 18, 19-year-old rookie.
I wanted to touch on something you said about Jason Kidd making him uncomfortable, and really kind of seems like taking him under his wing. How would you assess Jason Kidd's performance this year?
Yeah, it's interesting because just like last year, I think it's really hard to grade the job that coaches. It's really hard to grade coaches when they don't have the full allotment of their players. So Jason Kidd went through this last season. Kyrie goes down, AD gets hurt in his debut. They lose Gafford and Lively, so you never really get a shot to see what you have on paper. It's not the team that you have on paper. It's a different version of it. And I think he's kind of going through that same thing this year. But if there's one thing we can grade him on, it's the effort that his team plays with. They lead the league in the amount of clutch games that they've had this season. Over a third of their games have been clutch games. So, his team is playing hard for him. They're not getting blown out as much as you would think, even though they don't have all their pieces. Somehow, some way, they find a way to make the game close. And we saw that just the other night when they lost to the Lakers. Obviously, they were down pretty big to start. They had a phenomenal third quarter, and they were able to take advantage of the Lakers. Went up by as many as 15, but then obviously they surrendered that lead there in the fourth quarter. So they're pretty much in every game, but I would give Jason a lot of credit just because his guys are playing for him, especially those two ways.
So, what is the roadmap for the rest of this season? Is this season kind of a wash, basically? Just in terms of the injuries, you're just looking forward to the future, and this season's kind of like the building blocks in terms of getting Cooper Flagg acclimated to be the face of this franchise? Or is there something that this team can do to kind of make a push towards the playoffs?
Yeah, I think, like I said, no matter what, I think this team is going to play hard. It's just going to come down to who's available. We still don't know when Kyrie Irving is coming back this season, if he'll come back at all. Jason Kidd talked about it a little bit before the Lakers game and said he would love to see Kyrie, Anthony Davis, and Cooper Flagg on the floor together. But unfortunately, Kyrie and Anthony Davis aren't healthy, and they won't be for what he described as a while. So it's going to be interesting going into next Thursday's trade deadline, whether Davis is still a member of this team or not. He's their most valuable trade asset. And obviously, I know after another injury that trade value kind of takes a hit, but he's still one of the best players in the NBA when he's healthy. And that's kind of been the story of the story of his career as of late. Just when he's healthy, he's dominant, but when he's not, it's kind of unfortunate. But I think for the rest of this season, it's pretty much going to be about Cooper Flagg's development and the development of the rest of their young guys. You look at a guy like Max Christie, who's shooting the lights out from three, had a career high eight threes in the Garden on Martin Luther King Day, January 19th. Then you got a guy like Najee Marshall, who's playing the best basketball of his career. So I think we're going to see a lot of just in terms of the rest of this season. It may not amount to wins, but you're going to see a lot of development from a player's perspective. And to be honest, they won't admit it, but they probably need to lose this year just because of their draft pick situation. They only have one first round pick that they control, and that's 2026. The next time they have their own first round draft pick is going to be 2031, just because of all the draft picks they traded away just to build around Luka Dončić, who's no longer here.
Yeah, that's a rough spot to be in. And I agree with you. I think this year is the year for them to see if they can get another high lottery pick. Well, I wanted to touch on something. You talked about like Jason Kidd and really getting the most out of the two-way players, young players. I've followed a rebuilding team before, and we always get excited about the two-way guys. Like, that's the future, that guy. And generally it doesn't happen, right? They generally move on. But out of all the young player two-way guys, who's like your sure bet to be on the Mavericks in 5 years?
Ooh, that's a good question. 5 years.
We can say 3. We'll say 3. I give you 3.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about a Brandon Williams, a guy who was on a two-way last year, and they were able to convert his contract to a standard because he stepped up big when Kyrie Irving went down. And obviously, the Mavericks situation right now, they're limited in terms of bigs, they're limited in terms of point guards. And Ryan Nembhard, their two-way undrafted rookie, has had a lot of big moments for the Mavericks. He was in the starting lineup at one point, early November, early December. He's a guy who I can see them converting to a standard contract. You got a guy like Musa Cisse, came out of Memphis, obviously undrafted, but he's another guy who has played really well, just especially as of late, since he's gotten into the rotation now that Anthony Davis is out. You got Daniel Gafford, who's been out. So he just plays with a lot of energy, a lot of effort. He's super athletic, active on the defensive end. He's a lob threat. I really like Musa's energy, what he brings to this team. So and then you got a guy like Miles Kelly who's gotten some run as of late. But everybody knows him because he's a shooter. He's a dead-eye shooter. But I would go with, out of those two, out of Musa and Ryan, I'm going to say Ryan just because point guard is going to be a position that's going to be important for them going forward.
So we're quickly approaching the anniversary of the Luka Dončić trade, an event that shook the basketball world. Considering we're almost 1 year removed from that, can you kind of talk about what the fan base is feeling overall? Because I think in the aftermath, I got the sense, at least from a national media perspective, a lot of hostility towards management. Has the fan base moved on from this trade, and have they embraced Cooper Flagg? Have they fully moved on, or is there still some bitter feelings? Like, what's kind of the temperament of the fan base these days? Seems like even though this season you mentioned the injuries, but there's a lot to be hopeful for, especially with Cooper Flagg. But yet there's still kind of that shadow of what that Luka Dončić trade really did to this franchise.
Yeah, for sure. I think every feeling that the fans have is omnipresent. Every feeling you could imagine. I think they're still heartbroken that Luka was traded. At the same time, they're super excited about Cooper Flagg. They still have a lot of animosity towards the former GM, Nico Harrison. I think a lot of that disdain has kind of waned since he was fired 11 games into the season. So you don't hear fire Nico. You don't hear sell the team. You don't hear nearly as much negativity at games. Actually, you don't hear any negativity at games anymore. They're rooting their squad on, and that started immediately after Patrick Dumont dismissed Nico Harrison. So I think the fan base that they understand that Luka is with another team, and when he comes back to the AAC, as we saw the other night, they shower him with as much love as they can. They even had signs, and this is a franchise, well, not franchise, but a fan base. You don't see a lot of signs at the AAC, but they wanted to send a message on this particular night, and they had 8 one-letter signs that pretty much spelled out "come home." So they want Luka to come home when he's going to be a free agent again in 2028. So I would say never say never. It's pretty hard to predict right now, but that's going to be interesting to see as we get closer to 2028. But this fan base has pretty much seen it all in the last 2 years. You've had a team who was built around Luka. They went to the finals. They came up just short because they didn't have enough offense. And then you go out in the offseason, you add a guy like Klay Thompson. You're expecting he's the missing piece. And then you trade your franchise cornerstone in the blink of an eye. Pretty much hit reset. You focus all of your energy and attention on a core built around Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis. They get hurt, unfortunately, and then you miss the playoffs and wind up with the number 1 pick in the NBA drafts. That they've literally seen everything you could possibly imagine happen in such a short amount of time.
Mike, what were you thinking when the news broke? Were you just like shocked? Did you think it was fake, or?
I was appalled. I'm not gonna lie. I got a text message hinting right before Shams Charania of ESPN broke the news. I got a text message just asking to talk. It was pretty late at night, and I was like, sure, I can talk. I mean, it's pretty late on a Saturday night, and it's the trade deadline, so I had a feeling something was about to happen, but I didn't think it was going to be that. And then the world found out, and yeah, I had a pretty busy next few months.
No, crazy. And when you describe the fan atmosphere, and Alan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, even you, Mike, but what you describe, I don't think I've ever seen before in terms of the fans still wanting that player back. Usually fans are pretty ruthless. Like if a player gets traded, see you later, and you're an enemy of that franchise until something else happens. But they seems like they still have feelings about Luka wanting to come back. Do you think that will change? Like let's say next year the Mavericks they recover, they become good, and they have to play the Lakers. It's a contentious Western Conference playoff battle in a hypothetical situation, and Luka breaks their hearts. Do you see a scenario in which they're like really that positive feelings that turns into animosity just due to the basketball on the court? Or do you think they always will have those feelings of wanting Luka back, despite if they're breaking their hearts in a competitive situation?
Yeah, that's interesting, and that's something I'm definitely intrigued by. Will we ever see a playoff series between a Luka Dončić led LA Lakers team and a Dallas Mavericks team under Cooper Flagg and Kyrie Irving and whoever else is still on the team at that point? I don't think there will be any animosity toward Luka just because of the way that the trade happened. Like, if you think about it, Luka didn't ask out. He didn't want to leave Dallas. It happened because of former leadership in the front office. They made a decision, and that decision obviously led to a lot of different things, but it wasn't Luka. And if you remember, like, going back to his first return to the AAC to play against the Mavericks on April 9th of last year. When they played the tribute video, Luka couldn't contain himself. Like, tears were coming down his eyes. He was having a hard time. He was really emotional. And then he went out and dropped 45 on his whole team and led them to a victory. So that's definitely a guy who didn't want to leave Dallas. He still owns a home here, and he was there before they played each other the other night. So I don't think there would be any disdain, even if he was to play this team in a playoff series. And you know how Luka is; he's pretty animated when he's talking to opposing teams. I think that would be a great story. Like, as a journalist, I would love to cover a series like that. But I don't think the fan base would turn on Luka at this point.
Yeah, I like the fact that the fans had that comebacks thing, because I don't know. I watched kind of the Lakers, and I don't know that he seems like fully at ease with the Lakers like he did in Dallas. Like, there's something there. So I don't know, Mike. What are your thoughts? Do you think there's even a small chance that he pulls like a LeBron back to Cleveland kind of move and comes back to Dallas?
So if you would have told me back, what was that, 2010, when LeBron went to, it was 2010 when LeBron went to join the Miami Heat. Obviously, a lot of bad things were said about LeBron following his decision, specifically by owner Dan Gilbert. I would have told you LeBron is never going back to Cleveland. And for him to go back in 2014, ultimately lead them to a championship in 2016, he did everything he pretty much said he was going to do for that franchise, and he got to go to L.A. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that the same could happen for Luka, especially since he didn't want to leave in the first place. So anything's possible.
So, Mike, I want to get your perspective on the rest of the Western Conference. Very tightly contested. What have you observed in terms of any other team trying to catch the Oklahoma City Thunder? It seems like they're the team to beat. A lot of the chat has been around, hey, they have some weaknesses, but they're probably going to be the favorite to come out of the West. What have you noticed in terms of the teams that have played the Mavericks in terms of, challenging that number one seed of the Thunder? Like, what have you observed in terms of it being maybe more closer in a race in terms of the top of that conference?
Yeah, for sure. I still think OKC is in a class of its own. They're the reigning champions. They have the MVP in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who could be seeking his second consecutive MVP. Obviously, they hit a few bumps in the road, probably right around the play-in tournament. Not play-in tournament, but NBA Cup. And the biggest team they've had the most difficulties with is San Antonio Spurs, who are second in the West. And I saw firsthand how incredibly scary Victor Wembanyama can be when he's fully realized. And obviously this is still early in his career, but when he hits his prime, I think he's going to be a force to be reckoned with. In that first game, obviously that was a season opener against the Mavericks, and Wemby was doing things that I haven't seen in all of my 34 years of living on a basketball court from a guy that tall. You have a guy that tall who's able to have a tight handle like he does, and he's pulling up from 3-point land with ease. You got a guy who kind of recognizes that his interior presence is his strength. And I think the mindset was what was different for me. Like, he knew that he couldn't be stopped, and he was gonna drive to the basket, dunk however he wanted to dunk, get to his spots. I just saw a guy who looked like he figured it out really quickly. And I think even despite the injury that he had earlier this year, accepting the role to come off the bench and just putting that team in position to be successful, I think that's pretty much the difference maker for that's what I've seen as far as the Western Conference. There are a lot of teams that are impressive. You look at a team like Denver, who's still third in the West, even without Nikola Jokic, who should be coming back pretty soon, maybe before the All-Star break, if not afterwards. That's going to be a team that's going to be reckoned with. Not sure if they want to make a move or anything, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens coming down the stretch. And I think the San Antonio Spurs probably has the best chance to kind of go against the Thunder, given their success against them.
Yeah, it's like I keep looking at the games that they're playing, and they have like some really strong games, but to me, it's like almost like rock, paper, scissors between the Spurs, the Thunder, and the Rockets, because the Rockets seem like they've got Wemby figured out. But yet OKC beats the Rockets, but the Spurs beat the Thunder. So a lot of it's going to matter like who's playing who and what round of the playoffs and what will they do in 7 games. But yeah, I like the Spurs' chances. I think they're well coached. Um, you know, when you talk about kind of the California teams, any thoughts on those guys? I mean, the Lakers have got the former Maverick Luka with them. So what's your take on some of those teams?
Yeah, for sure. As far as the Lakers, it's interesting. If Luka's not having a good night, it's going to be hard for them to win. And I kind of see like similarities between when he was here in Dallas and he pretty much had to shoulder the load each and every night until he got the requisite pieces, until he was beside a guy like Kyrie Irving, who was able to take some of that offensive burden off. You see them playing without Austin Reeves, they really miss Austin Reeves, and he's slated to come back tomorrow against Cleveland, which I'm really interested in seeing that game, or seeing the highlights because the Mavs play too. But just when you have that kind of big three of Austin Reeves, Luka Dončić, and LeBron James, I think they can make some noise, but they have to play consistent basketball. You can't have moments like you had against Dallas where you give up a 37-point quarter and now you have to dig yourself out of a 15-point hole. And at some point you were asking 41-year-old LeBron James to kind of be the all-NBA player that we've seen for the last 23 years. And I don't want to say that's not fair because he's still playing at that caliber, but like relying on a 41-year-old guy to get it done each and every night, that's going to be pretty hard. So it's going to take a lot from the supporting cast, like Rui Hachimura. You look at a guy like Marcus Smart, who's pivotal in that game against the Mavericks. But then, obviously, it all starts with Luka Dončić. So I like what the Lakers have. I like what you mentioned the California teams. It's going to be tough for Warriors to pretty much make any noise with the injury to Jimmy Butler. The injury, Jonathan Kuminga, who we thought would get some more time in Butler's absence. They're in a tough pickle right now because, like I said, you can't rely on your oldest player, Steph Curry, Draymond Green, to kind of lead you to the bright side. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on the California teams.
Wow, makes sense. Mike, thank you very much for the time. Truly appreciate it. Can you let our audience know where they can find you on social media, where they can find your work, and any upcoming projects you might be working on now?
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned, you can find my work at dallasnews.com. That's the Dallas Morning News. I'm on Twitter at Mike A. Curtis 2. And we are doing something pretty special for the anniversary of the Luka Dončić trade. So definitely be on the lookout for that.
Cool. Yeah, we'll be. I'll be on the lookout for that. Definitely. That should be really interesting. Mike, thank you very much for the time. Appreciate your insight. Good luck the rest of the season. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fellas, thanks for having me.